They'll be able to
Yeah, one of our research contract ended up marrying.
did you unmute?
Yeah, and then you got
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our virtual audience and our in-person audience. Thank you all for being here this Friday afternoon. I'm our Director of Business Development and Partnerships here at the Springfield Chamber, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to this specific program today, Redeveloping Career Pathways. It's a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. We've been working in the workforce sector for last 5 years now as a chamber, and I'm very excited to hear from our speaker, Dr. Corynn Gilbert, here today. But before we do that, I do want to give a huge shout out and big thank you to US Bank, who has sponsored the 2022 LunchVox series. This is our last one of the year. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We are going to be recording this program. Once these programs go up on our YouTube channel, they'll live under our Small Business Solutions Hub webpage. Right on our website, you can find that. All of our recorded programs are listed under there. Dani Thompson is our virtual host today. So if you guys are tuning in virtually and you've got a question that you want to ask at the end of the program, or if you're experiencing some technology issues or you can't hear us at all, please just go ahead and message her in the Zoom chat and she'll get that sorted out for you. We will have time at the end of the presentation for questions, but I would bet that Dr. Gilbert here has some discussion here throughout the program as well. So feel free to raise your hand. And again, if you're joining us virtually, let Dani know if you've got a question and she can raise her hand in the room here. For today's program, we are talking about reworking career pathways. We're examining local implications. And we're welcoming Bushnell University to hear about their perspective on this issue and how they're responding to business and industry and community needs around workforce pathways and career development in today's environment. Again, I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Gilbert today. She's a 30-year veteran in the higher education sector. She served in a variety of roles across the country, but currently serves as the Director of Development at Bushnell University. Her background in career development and academic advising gives her a unique insight into the role of higher education and workforce development. She serves on Bushnell's President's Council for Strategic Initiatives and also teaches in the Masters of Arts in Leadership program in the higher education concentration. Please help me give her a warm welcome.
When I hear 30 years, I start to feel old. I like to hear that out loud. I love when Paige reached out to me. I love the summary that she wrote, is that we have to talk about this topic because the idea that young professionals have hit their career peak at the age of 30, it's long gone. And so we are in a time where working professionals of all ages are pivoting to new career opportunities. They're continuing at their education. They're pursuing their own entrepreneurial endeavors. This is such an important topic, regardless of the industry you're in. And that's why I think it's exciting to talk about the intersection of higher education, being an employee, being an employer, and how these things can fit together to make our community a more thriving place to work and to live and to grow. It's important because we want to provide proactive opportunities for our employees. We want to keep our employees for the long term. We want to allow them to grow in the spaces within our workplaces and our communities. And we don't want them to feel hampered by their own career trajectory within our organizations. So one of my hopes today is that we get a bigger picture for what career development looks like, for what higher education looks like, and what lifelong learning means to us as employees and employers. And so the words that, or the language that Paige sent me was this idea of reworking career pathways and how higher education specifically are responding to some of those trends. You read my bio. I love that. I had it up there just in case people had registered without skipping it. That's the businessy part. I am a 10-year resident of Eugene. We moved here after kind of a long trajectory. We were on the East Coast. We were in California, Colorado, overseas, lived in Japan for 4 years. Bonnie and I have had some long, fun conversations about life in Japan. My husband served in the U.S. Air Force. And when we left the Air Force, we came back to the Pacific Northwest where he was from and where I had attended college. So 10 years in Eugene. We're so excited that we've had 10 years. We've been able to raise our kids through the bulk of their later elementary school through high school. So personally, I have 2 college students. I have one who's a junior in college at Butler University, far away, actually 1,903 miles away. My iPhone tells me all the time how far away that is when I see her name on there. I have a freshman in college at Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California. I have 2 juniors, identical twins at Sheldon High School, and I have an exchange student from Spain this year, and she's also a junior. So I have a house full of young women. And I've been a lifelong educator, and my children know that, and we have a culture of education in our family where we care deeply about education. But what I want to say is that I also don't believe that higher education is the only way. I want to say that out loud because we have so many industries represented. We have a lot of industries where traditional higher education paths are not the right paths. So what I'm going to talk about today is through my own lens as an educator and as an administrator, and as I believe as a visionary for higher education in this community, but it's not the only way. And so the things I'm going to address, hopefully you'll be able to glean, yes, that's my angle, but it's applicable to any industry across the board. So 5 young women in my life. I've been married for 25 years. So we hit the 25-year mark. Personally, I am also on the board of the Eugene Ballet, have been really involved with Eugene Young Life, and we're real active in the community. So we do a lot of hiking and climbing, and Addie's Diner is our favorite place. We have a tradition of taking the girls to Addie's, going out and hiking Pisgah, and we have been known twice to replace the swing. Just so you know, our family is the middle of the night replaced the swing twice because it was raining. So it's pretty fun. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the changing workforce, because I think we need to first talk about the people before we talk about the location or the industry that they're in. There's a lot of philosophical changes in our workforce, but some things have never changed. When we all grow up, we think that this is what our career trajectory is going to look like. People ask us from the small age, what are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to do when you grow up? And as children, as high school students, we only see a handful of careers, right? We see our parents, our grandparents, teachers, policemen, fire chiefs. You know, we see just a very narrow slice of the workforce pie. And we think we just need to pick one and go, right? But most of us know that is what we experience when we have to make that decision. All of a sudden, it's like, wait, I graduate from high school, I graduate from college. What are you going to major in? What are you going to be when you graduate? What are you going to do when you grow up? And this is where most of us actually live. I would argue that this is exactly where our employees live or are on that journey as well, right? So we have this idea that it's going to be a beautiful mx plus y equals b, or what is it? Y equals mx plus b algebraic equation. It's been a few years since I've been in algebra. If you do x, you add this, it will determine the slope of your career, how fast you go, how slow you go, but it's going to be a pretty straight line, when that's more of the reality. I love this because this is why I work with college students, because they come to us with this bag of ideas and we get to help them sift and sort. What are you good at? What do you care about? What are you called to do? Who do you know that has done this thing? And how do you ask them what it's like, right? And then we help them understand, what would this look like? But then what if I decide to change? There's no clear answer, but we get to, with traditional college students, we get to help them sort and sift that out. I would also argue, though, that when we look at resumes, when we evaluate future employees, we like to see this. We're forgetting that they came from here, right? So we're not valuing this process that we ourselves went through. We're looking for that career path that's been a straight, progressive line. Then when we get them into our companies, we like that line to stay the same, because we are thinking, I finally filled that job, and they filled it. And then we think they're going to be happy just doing that job because I've got my need met. When in reality, they're still here and we want to give them chances to grow, right? So I love those images. This graphic did not come in as clean as I had hoped, so I'll go through it a little bit. The reality of the career process, and this is sort of fundamental to understanding us, ourselves as employees and our future employees on our teams, is that we have school, we prepare for our first job, but it might mean that we interview, it might mean that we're underemployed or we take an entry-level job. This one is we might actually finally reach employment at skill level, but then we want to make advancement to a higher level, but then we might get laid off. There is no straight line in here either. Once we do find out what it is we love or what it is we want to do. So I think we need to honor that this is the reality of our work lives and our workforce, and just settle into that. On a very practical level, there's some additional challenges that are current realities. I'm going to talk about them in a minute, but let's preface that with there will be new ones 2 years from now and 5 years from now, right? So even though these are some of our existing realities, a workforce that expects flexibility, especially post-COVID, shifting age demographics, we will always have a workforce that is changing with birth rates of any given year, with disease and things that affect even longevity as we live longer, as people need to work longer because they didn't save enough, right? So we've got generational differences, clearly generational gaps in technology and learning and experiences and expectations. We know we have a big mismatch between employer needs and the skills that employees are coming to us with. Major career shifts are now normal, where it used to be that you might get a career and stay with it for 40 years. That's not the case anymore, and we know that. And we need to acknowledge that extended adolescence, which really people are saying is from 17 to 30, right? So extended adolescence impacts the age of workforce entry and stability, the age at which people finally settle into their work lives and their maturity there. So these are really important to address. And we could spend some time on any one of these, except they really are going to be different in a few years. So I want to get at some things that are deeper than the current trends in workforce. You used a great term, the duty of foresight. As the chamber, as employers, as community members, we have the duty of foresight. Let's think ahead. What's going to come next? But we can predict some things. But there's so many things we cannot predict. So we have to prepare for sort of all future contingencies. And that can be pretty overwhelming. So what I want to talk about is the idea that emerging career pathways, we have to understand how all those things I just showed you, the multiple options, people taking these kind of circuitous routes into their career. We want to look at what it means across the workforce. We have this old model, right? You learn up until you're age 18, right? You work for 35, 40 years in a field, then you retire. That was the old model. We know we're not living in that. We've not lived in that for a long time. Where we thought we've lived for a while is this idea that life expectancy has grown. People are no longer, Social Security now, you can take it, till you're 72 or 75 now, it keeps bumping up, right? So now you have a life expectancy that is longer. And we had this idea that you would do your first career, then you'd retrain, and then you kind of do your second career, and then you'd retire. That's actually not what is happening. Yes, that happens for some. But that's why they say here, it's an emerging faulty logic. That is not the pathways that people are taking. The emerging model, and this is messy on purpose, and I love it because it's this idea that our life expectancy now is upwards of 90 years, that learning needs to be a continuous process. That for 55 to 60 years, you're going to be engaged in something. It might not be one career A and then career B. For 55, 60 years, you're going to be engaged in the life of your community, in your workplace, in your family, while you're learning, while you're growing, and that you're going to be, you have this kind of 10 to 15 years season where you retire, but they're actually calling it reconditioning because you've spent your whole life working. You have to figure out how to make that pivot. But you see the line in the middle, right? Is that it's not constant. You're going to hit seasons and ebbs and flows, and it's not going to be formulaic anymore. The best part about this model is it honors the strengths of the learning journey. If you think about learning, we are born to learn. We start learning from the womb. We learn from the womb that, a fetus will put their thumb in their mouth and that it soothes them. And they learn that, and then they do it again. They learn that when they kick, sometimes they get a pushback, even in the womb, from the mom. And all of a sudden, you start learning. Our brains are elastic, right? We know that if we keep learning upwards into our 80s when we're learning new things, that's actually good to prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. We were made to learn. So this idea that learning is lifelong and that we need to integrate that into the career model is actually important for our longevity, for our health, and for our emotional and relational well-being. So I think we put on this learning hat, this lifelong learning hat, as workers and as employers, as employees, as employers. The other thing about this new model, that learning is lifelong, that workforce development, or that your workforce journey is very flexible and evolving, is that it honors workers at every life stage. I'm going to talk a little bit later about mentoring up and down the ladder. We've had this idea that mentorship is someone who's older, who's going to mentor somebody who's younger. But if we look at the lifespan here, we see that the benefit of being 20 is that your intelligence is fluid. And that as you reach the age of 60, you start to crystallize that intelligence. That's not a bad thing. We can talk about crystallization as negative, but I actually like the idea of crystallizing, meaning it becomes clear when you get older. We look at a 20-year-old or 29-year-old who might have really high executive function. And we know that executive function begins to diminish with age. But guess what? You peak your vocabulary at 67. So you've got young people who can really speak into the work lives of their older peers. And you've got older peers who can speak into the work lives and the development of our younger colleagues. So by thinking about career as evolving and as lifelong, we see that everybody can be honored, and we can do a better job of using those different stages of learning to benefit one another. So that's a bit of the picture of the workforce. I want to stop and just see if anybody has any comments or questions, thoughts that this brought up for you, or experiences that resonate with you. Yeah.
The new emerging graph that you had, I mean, when did that start? Is there any kind of a guesstimation?
I think what it is it's a 2020 hindsight. People are looking, it's not a predictive model. It's like, let's take a second and actually see what's been going on here, especially in the technology age. Most of this research is from IBM and and PricewaterhouseCoopers. They're looking at the workplace sort of in retrospect. So a lot of this is sort of from the 80s, really from the technological age, from the 80s till now, when the computer became king of our lives. Because that is a place where age and generation began to become a little more important, right? And so, because technology is always part of that conversation, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But yeah.
Point of clarification,
Yeah.
Dr. Gilbert, can you go back to the last slide? And I'm interested in the executive function. Can you just briefly sort of give us some examples of what
So executive function generally refers to the ability to multitask, the ability to handle competing responsibilities versus focus.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. So that's why we have a lot of folks that I'm great at multitasking.
yeah. But we also know that we don't really multitask as well, but we also know we don't stay not as good as we get older.
Switch
Yeah,
tasking.
yeah.
And
So
then
the benefit of being
concentration.
flexible and multitasking.
Okay. And so it's just sort of a general idea of when those peaks
Yeah.
are.
But don't you love this? Learning new information, it's peaking at 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't fit with our traditional model, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And again, it's a concept. It's
Yeah,
that concept.
Yeah. I think that's-
So
Correct, we've got Ashley Espinoza, if
Yeah.
you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Hi, Corynn and all. Sorry for not being there in person. I have two questions. Maybe they're comments, I don't know. So how does this fit with, we talk about how complex, the workforce is and really the model we're describing is still a pretty ideal model that you get to choose what you want to be, that you get to assume that you're going to go to college, that you're, all of those things are in place. How do we account for even like teenage moms or single parent households or those in poverty or foster children or sing, you know, those type of things that like that there's even like a step back from that, from what we are discussing. And then my second question is around, also we're talking a lot about, you know, or it sounds like about these type of jobs that you go to college and you get these jobs, but we know, you know, in the economy of Lane County, there's a lot of those blue collar jobs and a lot of those like high skilled, but very hard jobs, you know, like the ones that no one wants to be waking up at 5 a.m. today to go, you know, work outside type of jobs. And so I'm just curious where that fits into.
So all of this on the changing workforce is actually unrelated to higher education status. So if we look at these last few, oh, sorry, did I skip one? We're gonna get there. I went the wrong direction. So these last few are actually, yeah, they're unrelated to level of education. And the things that I'm gonna talk about in terms of what the workforce can do will be across the board, regardless of educational attainment level. But you're right, there's definitely barriers that the work, I don't know where I'm looking, is this where my camera is?
Yeah.
Talking to a machine. We're gonna talk about that and how any industry can actually create a learning environment that again is unrelated to traditional learning, unrelated to school-based learning, but how we create cultures that honor and inspire learning in an industry, learning in your career, and learning the soft skills is really what we're going to talk about, is soft skills. So I'll get there, Ashley. See there?
Yes, she
Yeah,
gave
sorry,
me a
I
heart.
put a heart on the screen if you can't see it.
So let's make a shift and talk about the changing workplace. Again, we've got a lot of current realities that, again, regardless of industry. So high reliance on technology. I don't know about you, but in my industry, I get a call about every 2 weeks of a new product, new software, new service that is going to change my work life forever, right? Now, if I had the money to just adopt all of these, I'm sure it would be great for me, but I don't have the time or the energy, and sometimes I don't have the learning capacity to learn new software every 2 months. So that's a reality. No clear boundaries on our work days. There are industries that have clear boundaries, but for most of us, with our phones and our Zooms and our email, it's hard to have clear boundaries. Now, offsite and remote is a real thing. 2 years ago, it wasn't quite a reality. I knew people who worked from home, and I didn't understand what that meant 2 years ago. I didn't get it. Travel has been upended. People whose work lives were dependent on travel, we know that's changed. Changing market forces all the time between supply chain and wars and industries that are now obsolete, products and services that don't even exist yet. This is our long-term reality. The difficulty finding employees. That will not always be true, but right now it is incredibly true. And then this idea that there's career impermanence, the jobs and skills that are becoming obsolete and new jobs and skills are emerging. These are current realities, but we can't, so we have this idea, again, of a duty of foresight, but since we can't predict all things, let's talk about some of the things that we can do to prepare for our future. This IBM PricewaterhouseCoopers study, I love it. It's a tech industry. And in 2016, they were saying STEM and tech capabilities were the #1 career role. Computer software skills, #2, right? Their third was, foreign language, analytics. Those were the most important things, even in 2016. By 2018, already things had begun to be upended. And flexibility, adaptability, time management, collaboration, effective teamwork, communication, creativity. These things are not dependent on where you went to school, what you did in school, what level of school you attained. These are the soft skills and human skills that allow people to be successful in whatever industry they choose. And we're seeing this shift very quickly. And in fact, what they're seeing is most of the managers in the STEM fields are not coming from the STEM fields. The managers and senior leaders are coming from the social sciences. Why? Because human skills have longevity and technological skills can be automated. So with AI and all the emerging changes in technology, human skills matter so much more. And even IBM is admitting this. I like this. This is my favorite quote. Technology skills depreciate, human skills appreciate, right? So the future of work, as we prepare for things that we can't even see yet, we know that we can invest in the human skills. This is great. This study, peak of the computer age, 1980 to 2015 or so there, the peak of the development of technology in the computer age. We know that high math skills still matter in the tech world, and if you're high social, high math, you've got the best position possible. But if you're low on math, as long as you're still high social, you're going to do pretty well. And look how much that's grown during the age of tech. Look what's gone down. High math, if you have low social skills, but you have high math skills, I touched it. That gap is even greater. And if you're low math and low social, it's going to be hard for you in the tech world to do well. So even in the world of technology, social skills matter. They reign. They win 2 to 1 over any other skill. So one of the things that, one of the reasons why I like higher education is that we're preparing future workforce members. Now, and actually this is where my niche will speak into this, right? Is I work with both traditional students, the 18 to 22-year-old who has the privilege of going to college out of high school. But I also work with a lot of students who are retraining or going back to school because they never finished and they're finding now that they would like to get a college degree. And actually some of those are the ones who were single moms, who were in industries that were dead end or whose jobs were gone, or they were in manufacturing. We've got this great, I don't know, some of you have seen the video. One of our recent graduates, Gabe Hobbits, he was a logger for 20 years. And he was in that hard job where you get up at 5 in the morning and literally risk your life. And after 20 years, he said, I can't do this anymore. My body can't take it. My family is at risk. He had to retrain. So he came back at 32 and got a little more than 32, probably 36, came back and got a ministry degree and is now a pastor and serving the homeless in our community. Now, he's emblematic of what that can look like, but he's not the only one, right? So we work with a lot of different students. Embedded in our particular approach to higher education at Bushnell is that career readiness is bigger than a job or a major, job skills or a major. People complain about higher education and say, well, I'm not using my degree. But we know over time across every major and every degree level, people they live longer, they make more money, they vote more often, and they are healthier across the entire spectrum of citizens. And that line grows from high school diploma to associate's degree, to bachelor's degree, to master's degree, to doctorate. So we know statistically that education as a whole propels people out of poverty, helps people change the economic future of their entire families. It's the #1 path to social mobility at any level, from high school all the way on. You move your way up that chain, but at every level, education is the most important factor in social mobility. So I bring that up because we are, in my industry, we're particularly working with a college-educated future student. But our idea is that success in the workplace is to prepare them for this long-term career life, not just their first job out of college, right? If we prepare people just for their first job out of college, we are setting them up for failure because we're not setting them up to be that lifelong learner that our workforce needs. So how does that look? And this is where it gets fun for me because I believe this is organizationally blind. These are skills that we want to invest in our students, that you can invest in your employees, regardless of their current educational attainment level, regardless of their current career path or industry. Because these are the things that are going to make ourselves and our employees successful for that very complicated career journey that they're going to be on. So I want to honor our time and go pretty quickly through these so we have some time to talk. But the first one is this. So back up. These come from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So in the industry of career development, higher education and the career sectors have come together to create an association that says, what do we need when we get this batch of college graduates, whether they're coming from the community college level or the graduate level or the undergraduate level, what do we need when they come out? What do they need to be able to do? So NACE is the industry that helps drive the educational process there. And so NACE has identified these 8 career competencies. we use at Bushnell, we use these career competencies from their freshman year until their senior year, and we embed these career competencies into their curriculum. During their junior and senior years, it is the curriculum for things like internships and practicums and things where our students are out in the community beginning to try on that set of skills that they've been learning during their education. So the first one is this idea of career and self-development, that we want to proactively develop ourselves in our careers through continual personal and professional learning, awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses, navigation of career opportunities, and networking to build relationships within and without one's organization. We all have to have these skills as we try to figure out, who am I? What am I good at? What do I bring to this organization? Is this the right fit for me in this organization? What else could I do here that would benefit my organization, right? What are the things that I don't know about myself yet that I need to know? What are the skills that I haven't tried yet that I might be good at? And what are the things that I've tried that I'm not good at? And I just need to say, I'm not good at this. And that's okay. And am I in the right position, right? So we want to teach within our students, we want to cultivate within our employees and in ourselves the ability to navigate our own personal development, to take that on as our own little self exploration, our own little journey of awareness. And we do this a lot of ways. We bring in some of the assessments, like Strengths Finder. And there's so many anymore, right? You can do Myers-Briggs, you can do the DISC, you can do the big giant 5 voices, it doesn't matter which one you do, because every time you do something like that, you're going to gain a little insight into yourself and to your fit within your organization. But navigating career opportunities. Sometimes this means we help our employees understand the industry that they're working in. And we say, here are some of the things that you can do in your industry to grow and learn. What is your goal? What is your future desire? What do you want to do when you grow up in this organization? The key here is that to the best of our abilities, we want to help people do this within their current environment so that we get to keep them for the long term. We know that turnover and finding employees is incredibly costly. Now, not everyone's going to be in the right fit all the time, but if they love their organization and they're just not in the right spot on the bus, let's help them find the right spot. And this is a key skill to develop. Communication skills. How many times have we pulled our hair out because people have not always learned to communicate? We get to cultivate communication skills. We do this, again, from freshman orientation until graduation, from the beginning of a master's program to the end. We help people understand how to formally communicate in written communication, public speaking, interpersonal, team communication. It's critical, regardless of industry. And it's not based on any kind of a degree, but we've got to develop communication skills, which really is communicating ideas effectively, being heard and hearing. It's not rocket science, but it is a difficult thing to communicate well. And we all know that if you're successful in communicating well, it's going to take you far in your role. Critical thinking. This is one of the things that probably gets me up in the morning with our students, is what does it mean to develop critical thinking skills in our employees, in ourselves, in our students? Because critical thinking, you have to understand context. You have to be able to analyze. Critical thinking is, how do I read the news in the morning and know what's true and what's fake? Critical thinking is, how do I look to the problem that might arise from the decision that I just made? Do I see that? Have I considered all the angles, or did I just hard charge? Critical thinking is deciding whether or not an interaction with a colleague could have repercussions for the organization. Sometimes critical thinking is not doing the thing you want to do, right? So it's a hard one to teach, but it can be embedded into the career journey. And we do it all over the place in our curriculum on purpose, because it's so important. Equity and inclusion. We have to understand the way that the world works. We have to understand the people that we work with. And by becoming aware, having a positive attitude, and learning the knowledge that we need and the skills that we need to equitably engage. This is, again, regardless of industry. So we're talking everything from every category of equity and diversity, But one of Ashley's comments is we also need to understand class differences, socioeconomic status. What does it mean to be inclusive? What does it mean to treat people with equity within and without my organization? It's really important. These are the soft skills that employers want. These are the soft skills that you want to hire to, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Leadership. I could ask every one of you, what is your definition of leadership, and you would have a different one. So sometimes leadership can be a little bit squirrely. I like this definition because it's pretty broad and pretty foundational. You recognize and capitalize on your personal and team strengths to achieve an organizational goal. Each one of you has organizational goals. Not every person might see themselves as a leader, but every person can engage in leadership and develop their leadership qualities. And so I love this. This is something that, at least on the college campus, we can do this in a lot of ways. We can teach leadership through clubs and organizations. We can teach leadership through group projects, through collegiate athletics, through community service, a myriad of ways that we can teach leadership. In your organizations, you have opportunities to coach and train leadership at every level from the beginning by creating a leadership culture that looks at your team and says, how do we capitalize on every person around this table? Not the people that aren't here, not the people that might be here in the future, but how do we see the people at our table right now? And are we creating an environment where they can thrive and be the best for our organizational goals? Professionalism. I know this is something that a lot of employers bemoan. Why don't people know how to write a professional email? Why? Because they haven't been taught. So at every level, whether it's a classroom or in your setting, we get to help teach professionalism. Up and down the chain, they've got people, this is not age dependent. It might be primarily young people who are learning how to be professionals, but each industry, professionalism looks different, even down to learning how to dress appropriately for that industry. I will change my outfit in the middle of the day if I have a donor meeting at a corporation and if I have a donor meeting at a sawmill. That is professionalism. That's my industry, right? But I need to know what it means to be professional in my industry. What does customer service look like in my industry? We teach professionalism with our students because from the beginning, they start to learn how to write their resume, how to write their personal statement, how to give their elevator pitch. But these are not dependent on social class or on job industry, because each of you have the things in your world that someone says, oh, they're really good at their work. And this is why. It's the soft skills of professionalism. How to demonstrate effective work habits. And yes, some things are universal, right? Showing up on time, responding to emails promptly. If someone doesn't know these things in your community and your workplace, teach them. Create an environment where they can learn them. Leave your employees better. When they leave you, they should be better for you, right? And this is a way that we can easily do this. Teamwork, this is a culture thing, right? But learning to be a good team player is a life skill that employers want and that employees need. Building and maintaining collaborative relationships to work effectively toward common goals while appreciating diverse viewpoints and shared responsibilities. So as we know, teamwork is not about agreeing all the time, right? Teamwork is about hearing everyone, charting a course of action, and then collaborating as we get there. This is a soft skill that if you're on a sawmill, if you're working a night shift somewhere, it doesn't matter. Teamwork is critical. And we get to train this up in our students. You get to train it up in your employees, and you get to be a good team player in your organization. Again, these are the things that supersede temporary changes in the workplace, temporary and current trends in our workforce and our workplace, because they're going to be here long after those changes come and go. Technology. It's number 8 for a reason. We need technology skills. We all need to live in the reality that we live in a technological world. We need to understand and leverage technology ethically, love that, ethically, to enhance efficiencies, complete tasks, and accomplish goals. One of my favorite sort of organizational behavior gurus talks about automating, delegating, eliminating, and then reevaluating. Everything we do, first, if we can automate it, we automate it because that frees us up for the human skills that can't be automated. The human skills will make our organizations far more successful. But if we can leverage technology to automate things, that will give us some more bandwidth, right? We automate, we delegate well. The right people doing the right things in our organization, technology can help us with that. And then eliminating the things that are cluttering our lives in the workplace. And then the idea of reevaluating is, should we be doing this at all? Does this make sense? Is this the best use of our time? Is this the best use of our skills? But technology, we can't be afraid of it, but we also can't chase every technology trend. But we do need to create a culture in our environments where technology is embraced and we help people move further along the technological learning curve than they are now. Not everyone's going to be the same. We have a guy on our team. He is our tech guy. Now, he wasn't hired to be our tech guy. He's our university relations and church relations director. He's amazing with people. But if I'm stuck, I usually call Lars and say, Lars, hey, can you help me with this? Right? I'm grateful that he's 30 and willing to do things that I haven't learned yet. That doesn't mean I don't get to learn. It doesn't exempt me from learning. So creating an environment where we are not afraid of technology, we don't let it drive us, but it isn't the primary thing that we need to look for with future employees. Went a little longer on that than I wanted. So let me just briefly talk about how higher education and how learning fits into this whole process. And again, knowing that at any level, going back to school or going to school is a privilege. We know that. And I'm going to talk about the ways that higher ed is responding to those realities. But philosophically, I love this quote. Former president of Lewis and Clark, higher education has three core purposes: to encourage lifelong learning of the self and of one's own values, to develop the skills needed to embark on a meaningful career, and to prepare for full and civil participation in public life. This is sort of education for the common good. It's ideal. I know it's ideal. But if we think about higher education as more than career preparation, we're actually career preparation in terms of the long spectrum that we talked about in the beginning, not that first job out of college, right? So career preparation as this sort of symphony and ebb and flow of our lives that are not clear paths. So luckily, higher education is not stuck in the old model where you go to college at 18, you graduate at 22, and you go get your job and everything is good. That still exists, and that is a significant portion of the higher education industry. Obviously, we live in Eugene. We see that all the time. But what you may not see is all the ways that higher education is responding to other sectors of the workforce, specifically certificate programs, right? A lot of schools and programs at every level, from community college to technical colleges to four-year universities, are offering certificate programs that provide very real, tangible training in a skill set. It might be data analytics, certificate in data analytics. It might be graphic design. It might be, a GIS. We're talking about GIS. People start to learn some skills that they can help with a GIS team. Certificate trainings, and in many cases, these are stackable. So someone doesn't have to start from scratch and say, I got a four-year degree ahead of me. That's too much. They can start by doing some training and certificates. Again, industry specific, I don't need to go into, but the idea is that higher education isn't static anymore. We're very creative in how we do this. New degree programs are constantly being developed to address industry needs. A couple examples. U of O and OSU are both expanding their data analytics programs. Why? Because we're realizing that we are living in a data world, and we need to be able to analyze and apply what that data means for future trends. So data analytics is kind of the hot degree in many places. Bushnell looked at our community and said, we've got some very real mental health needs and medical needs in our community. What can we do? So we got our counseling program fully accredited 5 years ago, and we now have 96 students in our Masters of Clinical Mental Health just this year, we will now be pumping out between 30 and 40 clinical mental health counselors onto the streets of Eugene and Springfield every year. This is an on-site program. Why? Because our community needs it. So higher ed will keep doing this as we look around and you come to us and say, we have a need. We need people who can do X, Y, or Z. How can you help us? Nursing. Lane Community College came to us and said, we have this problem. We're training great RNs. They're going out in the workforce. They're doing a great job. But now larger bodies that be have determined that we need more nurses with bachelor's degrees. What do we do about this? Peace Health needed 80% of their nursing workforce to have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And most of their nurses were RNs with a 2-year RN degree, doing great work as nurses, but they were being influenced by factors way above their control, right? So what did we do? We responded. We created an online bridge program that allowed those nurses to stay in their jobs during the day and get their online bachelor's degree at night so that they could get higher pay and get accreditation to make our hospital the best that it can be. It was awesome. Then they came back to us a few years later and said, "That's not enough. We need more clinically trained nurses. What can you do?" We said, "Well, let's see what we can do." So we launched an accelerated Bachelor of Science in Nursing, a clinical nursing program on site at Bushnell University in January. We had 15 brand new nurses who will graduate next Friday and join the workforce. Many of them already have jobs. So in 12 months, we created a program that allows these students to fast track into clinical nurse education. We get to speak to our education communities as a workforce to say, this is what we need badly. Can you help us? And higher ed is responding. It's not static like it used to be. So it's really good for our community. The biggest change is, of course, flexible course delivery. I know that people have fears about online learning, but I've done both traditional degrees, hybrid degrees, online degrees personally. And I'll tell you, it's a far cry from what we thought it might be in the beginning. And it will never replace all on-site learning. It's not appropriate. But in many cases, our employees can benefit by not leaving their jobs, by working towards a degree that they can do at night or on the weekends. This is phenomenal. These are phenomenal opportunities for working parents, for people who do envision that bachelor's degree that maybe they started 15 years ago and never finished. Or they hit a wall in their career and their boss says, really need someone for this job that has some of these skills. Now, maybe you don't need the degree, but maybe along the way, as you gain some of these management skills or data analytics skills, you actually finish that degree and it launches you into the future. That's also really good for upward mobility. We know that. So we've got online, hybrid, synchronous, asynchronous. What that means is taking a class like Monday nights from 6 to 9, I log on to my class. That's synchronous online learning. And then asynchronous online learning means at any point during the week, you log on, you complete your assignments, you have an interaction online with your professors, and you don't have to be at a specific time and place.
There's another component that I'm just learning about with training and upskilling, and like there's a non-credit also, yes. and there's online industries or what am I trying to say? People that provide instruction online yes. for non-credit, like for me, for example, I know Excel enough to get by.
Yeah.
But if I need to really know it and be able to maximize it and use it, then I need to take a class, and I won't necessarily get a certificate for it.
Right.
But I'll still have that ability to, I believe the term is upskill.
Yep, absolutely. So, a lot of industries do that. I know that like the Society for Human Resources Management, you can get a certification. In fundraising, you can get a CRFP, which is a certificate for registered fundraising professionals. Now, I'm a full-time fundraiser. I'm not going to do that. That's not working. That's not a requirement for my job, but it might be for somebody else, and it's not tied to a degree. And that's all a form of that lifelong learning that we want to create in our culture. And so, and actually right here, specific skills and industry training programs and areas of expertise. Now, in this case, it's faculty expertise because I'm talking about higher ed, but same thing. All across your industries, your governing bodies, your organizations are going to have opportunities. And if your organization does it or your industry does it, there's going to be transferable ones. Excel is transferable to all of us, right? Learning how to, even doing public speaking, encouraging someone to go do Toastmasters so they can become a better public speaker. That's a form of ongoing lifelong learning, right? This is the fun part, actually, and that's why I'm gonna live here for a second, is what can we do as organizations honoring this very creative career trajectory that all of us are on, wanting to invest in our employees. We get to create an ethic of education in our organizations where lifelong learning is valued, where an employee is not stuck or static, where we don't hire them for this discrete set of skills and say, now do this skill for the lifetime of in our organization or until you leave to go find somewhere else because we didn't encourage you to learn and grow here, right? We want to create this growth mindset. You guys probably heard a lot about growth mindset and fixed mindset. I think as employers, sometimes we have a fixed mindset. I'm going to fill all the seats on my bus. and then we're good. And then someone leaves, oh, I got to fill it again. What if we had a growth mindset about our positions, our roles, the things that we've created? We've constructed these, we can change them. In my office, my boss hires people and then asks them to, over the first 6 months of their job, rewrite their job description. This is the job description generally that we're thinking we'd like to hire you for. And in 6 months, let's look at the job and see if it still fits you. And how can we adjust that? Because he hires the right person with the potential to build a job, and then has them really recreate their job description as they understand their own skills and gifts, right? So having a growth mindset about your employees and their roles in your organization. Let's keep them longer. Let's help invest in them and keep them longer. We want to reward those soft skills at every point. Reward interpersonal skills, reward customer service, reward teamwork. Notice your employees when there's a conflict that got resolved and you didn't have to be a part of it, right? Reward an environment that says we value who you bring to work, not what you do at work. I think that's really important. We need to identify transferable skills in our prospective employees. Let's not expect their resume to be this straight line. Let's honor an interesting journey. I mean, I had 13 years out of the workforce. I was home with my children. I worked in a variety of areas in higher ed, and most have been in higher ed, but it was not a clear path. And I said one time, well, I'm a mile wide and an inch deep in higher ed. I haven't been in every single position in this silo within higher education. And I had a president say to me, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That means you're a pocket knife and you can fill any role on this campus. I want you. What a great idea. Don't we want to hire people that are like pocket knives for our organizations? Let's reward and let's identify and reward transferable skills. And many of those are those soft skills. You don't have to have industry knowledge to be a really great, you can learn industry knowledge as you go along. This idea of hiring person fit over job fit, that's not always possible. There are fields, don't get me wrong, where you have to have skills in a particular area. But for many of us, we get to hire the right people and help the job fit to them as they grow. Obviously, investing in employees' ongoing leadership development is really important. Nobody wants to stay where they are for their whole lives. Very rarely. There might be people, but none of us. We all have aspirations and ways that we want to grow. And we know it's good for us when we grow, and we know it's good for our organization. So invest in leadership development. And then I really think it's important to value all ages and stages of that career journey. This idea of mentorship up and down the ladder. We want young people, and we want them to value our older set, and we want our older set to value our younger set. Look to each other's gifts in your organization. That will create a robust environment where individuals are honored for what they bring, not for what they don't have. Right? So if you've got someone on your team that's an expert at Excel, awesome. Keep learning. They get to help you. Lean into them when you don't have the skills. It can be a win-win because you've got this crazy vocabulary that they don't have yet, right? According to that career aptitude peak, right? So it's just important that we create that culture.
Can I say one more?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're great.
And so this is I just really, the overall and everything that you're talking about it's a great time. It's magnificent. And I'm in my 50s. The peaks of my career were and it could have been industry specific, but I don't think so. I was always told I was dispensable, always, and that we can just replace you. And I don't know if this is new because there's a lack of people and you really need to grow people and keep people because there aren't very many people to replace, or if it's, I don't know. How incredible to be at a time, let's say somebody in their 30s or 40s. I'm still in the workforce. I'll be in the workforce forever. But to not feel dispensable. Yeah. That was just that's what I felt.
Yeah.
And it could have been my industry, which was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Pretty tough industry.
I was told that too.
Well,
Yeah.
And you weren't in the same industry.
Yeah, it was just kind of, just a little, take a piece of humble pie.
Yeah.
I think it's how the employers,
Yeah.
depending on the individual.
And I like the idea that
No.
I could be replaced right? I want to be that employee that says, I want to be so valuable to your organization. No, I'm not indispensable. The organization will live without me, but I want to bring so much added value that there would be value lost if I left. How do we communicate to our people that there would be value lost if you left? What would it take to pour into you so that you get to keep adding your value to our team, right? So one of the ways that we do this, and this is just our one way, understand this is not every way, but we have sort of adopted at the university the Patrick Lencioni model from the Ideal Team Player, right? You guys, I don't know if you guys have, who's familiar with it? You are already, okay. We actually have a rubric when we do hiring, and we hire a lot of people. The university is obviously not huge. We're not U of O. We have about 130 full-time employees and about 300 total employees between adjuncts and part-time coaches and part-time advisors and that sort of thing. But we use this rubric. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I want to go through it just briefly because I think it speaks to the value of lifelong education, the value of hiring the right people for your team, and really honoring those soft skills that are going to be the things that propel people for the life of their career, not just for the job at hand, so that we can adapt to this changing workforce. Hungry, humble, and smart. Those are the three categories that Lencioni uses to understand who people bring to the workplace. And for us, none of these are negotiable because the best employee has to be all three. And so let me just briefly talk about what this means. Hungry, a hungry employee means they're intrinsically motivated, diligent, going above and beyond, always looking for more responsibility. Doesn't mean they're workaholics. It doesn't mean they sacrifice other areas of their life, but it means they look at themselves as an eager contributor to what's next. What can I do next? How can I make this place better? How can I leave this place stronger if for some reason I do leave this organization or this role? How can I leave it better? I mean, that's, to me, that's a no-brainer. You've got to hire employees that have this. But humble, we don't use humble a lot. I mean, we talk about humility, and sometimes we talk about it in a self-deprecating kind of way. What humble is, according to Lencioni, and in this context, is being quick to share credit, quick to praise their teammates, being teachable, and concerned with the team goals first. Self-confident without being arrogant. Humility is not self-deprecation, right? It's not lacking in confidence. It's saying, I have something to bring, but I'm not the only one bringing it to the table. I've got an idea, but mine is not the only idea, right? So it allows a team to feel safety, and it allows every idea around the table to be heard. It values every employee, from the person who empties out the trash, to the person who turns off the lights, to the person with the key to the storeroom and the key to the building, right? It's a humility that says, you matter to this organization as much as I do. Hi, baby.
We don't even have to look to see what this is.
I know.
We know who just came in. That's our chief canine officer.
I know, she's a canine officer, I love it. And then, again, smart, a word that we could probably misappropriate, right? For this context, smart means that high emotional intelligence. Doesn't take much to read about EQ and IQ. They're both important, but EQ is what's going to make a better team player. You want smart people. You want people who are quick learners, but more importantly, you want people that are eager to learn and willing to learn, right? So high emotional intelligence, keen judgment, keen interpersonal awareness. You want an employee who can read the room, who can read the relationship, and people that are curious and sensitive to the needs of others. I mean, if you have one of these and not the other two, if you have two of these, you bring a lot. But if you have three, oh my gosh, you become somebody that people want to work with. And we're going to get much more done when you are the person that people want to work with. And so this is just one way that we've prioritized this idea of soft skills over training. We hired someone recently who had no experience in our software. We have a pretty complex donor software called Razor's Edge. It's kind of a beast, right? But we knew we can send them to a course. We can send them to training. This person was the right person. And each of you has your own example in your own industry. But as we change our workforce, there's just sort of some true north things that I think will keep us moving forward. And that's And there are obviously unique obstacles to every sector, every level of job, of hiring, in terms of across, kind of across a hierarchy. These are some things that have worked for us. Knowledge can be taught. Industry knowledge can be taught, skills can be taught at some level. I know that you get far into an organization and yes, you've got to have some background, but we see all the time college presidents who are entering in the higher ed world because they've come from the corporate world and they're bringing great gifts to the higher ed sector. Let's think about that a little bit more creatively when we look to fill our spots and to be the kind of team that can move forward. So I know some of you are going to have to go, and I probably went a little longer than I was supposed to, but if we don't get to these questions, what I encourage you to do is to maybe we'll send the PowerPoint out, is to take these questions back to your team. How do you support practically, on a very practical level, how do you support your team members in their ongoing learning development, career development, and lifelong learning? What are you actually doing? If you don't have a list for that employee who comes to you and says, I'd really like to grow in this way, then you got to start a list. Start thinking about how you can actually do this. How have you created an environment that is either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset when it comes to who you hire and the roles that they're in? And then you need to decide which of those 8 career competencies matter to you most. You might have a different order, and that's okay. But start identifying the career competencies, the larger competencies that you want to see in people when you're deciding who to hire, how to hire, who to move into what positions, how to grow your career pathways within your organization. And then how would hiring for person fit, in this case, my model of hungry, humble, and smart, how would hiring for person fit over job fit change your hiring and training practices? This is actually where Ashley's comment is really important, because if we start hiring person fit over a skill set, we hire people that bring something to the table, regardless of the degree that they have, regardless of the training that they've had. We can elevate those people and honor the skills that they bring that we can't teach very well. It's hard to teach people skills, right? So, and we know that people are going to thrive and move further on in their career if they have those skills. So since we won't have time to talk about that around the table, take those with you, take this into your organization and have this conversation. Are we creating a culture in our organization that has an ethic of education, an ethic of growth, and an ethic of responsiveness to the needs of our people in our industry? So, yeah.
I just ask a couple comments. One is, I'm a behavioral psychologist, and I do disagree with the idea that it doesn't matter what assessment you use, because many of those assessments you mentioned have very little validity and reliability as far as test and retest reliability. What kind of mood you're in today can affect what it is. But one we use with our clients in assessing job fit, which I think is really important, is they have to have the cognitive abilities that match people who've been successful in that job. Doesn't mean that they have to be brilliant for every job.
Sure.
If they're too brilliant for some jobs, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
But also they have to have the behavioral traits. And the key is that the assessment we use, if you took it now, or I took it now, if we took it again 5 years from now, we're going to look the same. And that's what's going to help them predict whether somebody's going to be a good job. And I agree 100% that personality fit, how they fit into the organization is critical. But it's really critical that if they want to avoid hiring the wrong person for that job, that they understand what their cognitive abilities are and what their behavioral traits are and how they fit with people who've been successful. Skills are learned, but you can't change who they are. It's
Most
like the astronauts,
organizations,
do they have the right stuff to be an
right.
astronaut?
And most organizations don't have the ability to do that extensive training. So I was more referring to things like that are accessible to people pretty easily, like a Myers-Briggs or like a Strengths Finder, some of the things that Gallup has done, just as sort of a first step. Some people have never done any of this self-exploration. They don't actually know if they're an introvert or an extrovert. They don't actually know if they're a detailed person or a big concept person, or if their strength is in strategic or administrative, some of those things.
Yeah, we use the Ph.D. select, which measures all of those things more reliably and more validly than any of those. And still only takes about an hour.
It's important.
There's no way something can be 100% absolute though.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean, that's true. But research shows very strongly that your chances of hiring someone that's going to be successful and going to be a top producer, if they fit that model, that performance model, goes way up. I mean, so it's not a perfect predictor, but it's something that you can't know otherwise without doing that upfront. You can't find, it doesn't have to do with their skills, their education, and those things are near as predictive as their cognitive abilities and their behavior traits. Those are by far the most important.
Can I just add to that? Because as a small employer, a leader of an organization, as a small employer, I can relate to both of what you're saying. I completely understand, Jim, what you're saying in a sort of almost a scientific approach to it. But as a small employer, I found what Dr. Gilbert is saying is very helpful, because it's, for me, we hire for the person, and then continuous growth and self-awareness. So my job is to ensure that not only I, but my employees have the opportunity to do reflection and self-awareness. And not any one is like, I love that Patrick Lencioni has a new one called the widget, the genius of it's the 6 geniuses.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a scientific or sort of competency based as it is a self-awareness, why I'm happy at work, because when I'm doing this, even though I'm competent across multiple, those are the kinds of things that I think, as a small employer, that I relate to that.
Well, I have a lot of clients who are very small employers, and for them, making a bad hiring decision is much more critical than for even a bigger.
Yeah, and that's the difference, hiring as opposed to once you get like an employee and their growth and their leadership, like over a period of time, is more what.
They're both incredibly valuable.
Yeah, the idea of this is just to help you make the smarter hiring decision. It's not supposed to make a decision for you. I mean, it's lots of other factors, but it should be about a third of your decision.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's great. Super important. Any other questions that are for the good of the order?
Did you say you were gonna send out the PowerPoint?
Yeah, we can send it out. Paige can send it out. So, and definitely email me if there's things that you thought, gosh, this is the first time I've pulled this content together, because it was in response to Paige's specific request. But as we talk about these things, there may be areas that I really would have liked to do a deep dive, and I might not be the right person, but let's figure out who the right person might be in that deep dive. Maybe Jen, you doing a deep dive on some of the things when it comes to that hiring piece, and what can small businesses do on the hiring side? So, and yes, mine was much more.
I love your presentation. It was really great.
That was great. And my response has been, I've done so many of those assessments, even the ones on your phone, and each time I learn something. Now I know, so I mean, I like strengths because of Gallup. I'd love to. And I do love strengths because we've had now 1 million, Gallup has done that with 1 million people at this point, the Strengths Finder. Strengths Finder is unique in its goal.
Based on 4 million.
That's even better.
That's what it was.
Even better. So it's a lot of fun. Anyways, my contact information will also be out, so.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just think it's fun. I love the idea that we get to think proactively about our futures as individuals and employers. And for me, I get to do that with our students, whether they're 18 or 40, because I've got both, right? And so.
I have to ask my question, Mr. Gilbert. I'm sorry, because I think this is really important from where I sit, for our attendees here, and just the topic overall. Yeah. And lots of questions, but I understand from Bushnell, you're doing some really innovative stuff, and we've had an opportunity to talk about that, and I so appreciate that. Yeah. So in your professional viewpoint, industry-wide, between the private and the public sector education sectors, whether it's K-12 or higher education, community colleges, are public sector education system providers, do they have more barriers to jump over, or is it pretty much everybody is innovating in this space? When it comes to responsiveness to workforce, because there's a lot of need for accelerated response.
Everyone is innovative, but the barriers are size. So we can, as a small organization, can be much more responsive. We are so much more nimble. We created and got that nursing program accredited within 18 months. Why? Because we hired someone from OHSU who had accredited their program up at OHSU. She came down, she had our program locked and loaded in 18 months. And when you have a larger organization like the Oregon system, like the community college system, the barriers are, they're bureaucratic, they're financial. Now we knew we had upfront investment, but we had figured out, we amortize this out and we can recoup our investment pretty quickly in tuition dollars by the third semester in, or by the fourth semester, or by the so because we're small, I think generally privates can be more responsive. If the private has a creative approach to course delivery, like we do, we have both and, right? We've got the traditional student and the non-traditional student. So if the organization has the ability to respond in that way, there are private colleges that they're focused on the traditional undergraduate, that's their mission. Awesome. We have to serve both. We're a little bit bifurcated in our mission. Industry, adult learners, online learners, on-site learners, everything from teachers to nurses to MBAs to the traditional students. So we're doing a lot of things. But because we're doing a lot of things, we've got some of those tools built in. So I would say, yes, they are innovative. And I'm not an expert on community colleges, but my experience has been they are looking at more of the skills base, and they're critical for that, critical for trades. Not as successful in the transfer to four-year universities. And so that's some of the differences that you see there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the barriers are logistic, size, bureaucratic, and financial. Yeah, so I think we can be nimble as a smaller organization. We're looking right now actually at a graphic design program within our business school, because a lot of, and a marketing, it's I think a digital marketing, the title is going to be digital marketing and communication major. That's going to be a hybrid of communication, business, and then graphic design. So we're working on creating that degree now, because the community has said we need people that are young people, especially, who are willing to enter into the digital space for communication quickly. So we're working on building that degree out now. Our computer science degree, which we've started, it was also a response. It's computer software engineering. It's not, we're not replacing some of the computer science of it, like up at OSU, but there's a need, especially in our sort of Silicon Shire, to have more software engineers. So we have created and launched our software engineering program for undergrads in a pretty quick hurry. We got a professor from, I think it was at the University of Portland, and he now comes down 3 days a week and teaches for us. So it's actually really fun to dream up what's the next program that we can create that will draw a student and provide a need in the community. Entrepreneurship is one of them. We're looking at creating an entrepreneurship track within our business school.
Yeah, we're going to need a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks want to dream to be an entrepreneur. But I'm not sure what they're getting into, right, Roger?
So we've always got our dream list of new programs that we want to create.
Good.
So yeah, I'll hang around. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Dr. Gilbert, thank you so much. That was a really fascinating presentation, and I had a lot of takeaways myself. I want to take just a moment, because you spoke about human skills quite a bit, and how difficult they are to teach. And we've heard that, whether you're calling them soft skills, human skills, essential skills, employability skills, professional skills, soft skills, that is really where our industries are identifying a gap right now, and we have heard you. And we are, thanks to a grant through Lean Workforce Partnership and the Future Ready Oregon Funds, we're actually currently developing a workshop that's going to get launched in early spring around a train the trainers model for those essential skills. And so if you're asking yourself, how do I teach those? They're hard to teach. How do I teach flexibility and adaptability and communication? We're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be offering that to employers who are members of the chamber here in the spring. So keep an eye and an ear out for that. We'll have more information, but wanted to tie that back to this presentation and talk about how important that really is in our community, but also as a nation.
I mean, don't laugh, but I've had to teach undergraduates how to address an envelope, because their parents never taught them how to write a thank you note and actually stamp it and write the address on there.
Yeah.
It's not speaking to their lack of intelligence. It's just no one ever taught them, right? So even stuff like that.
Just teaching them to use punctuation and capitalization.
I know. And guess what? They grow up, and then they go on and they're successful and wonderful, and it works. So.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Again, we'll send this presentation out. It has been recorded, and we'll post that on our Small Business Solutions tab under the Chamber Resource Library. Thank you all again for joining us. Thank you, US Bank, for sponsoring the series this year, and Systems West Engineers for the lunch. And if you haven't had any, please go ahead and take some with you as you leave. And with that, I will wish you all a good afternoon.
Thank you.